Dr. Bill Grady here again. On Wednesday, June the 7th, the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem will take place, the ancient capital of Israel, of course. And there's a beautiful story as to how God allowed this to take place that's not known by God's people generally. The facts of this story are confirmed in Michael Oren's book, 6 Days of War. Michael Oren was the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. But the spiritual connections are completely missed. And I want to review this story briefly for you today. On May the 27th, Egypt was preparing to attack Israel on a preemptive strike. It was called Operation Dawn because it was going to take place at sunrise. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, Nasser is woken up in his palace in Cairo by the Russian ambassador telling him that he had just heard from Moscow that Moscow had been contacted by President Johnson in Washington that Israel was aware of this surprise attack. And it wasn't really, it was more of deception than accuracy. But this spooked Nasser, and he stood down about 5 o'clock in the morning. The very next day, May the 28th, on Sunday, the Israelis are in their war cabinet deliberating over attacking Egypt. And the Hawks were in the majority of the vote. But at the last minute, to make a long story short, by late Sunday afternoon, the Prime Minister Eskrel of Israel, he received 2 communiques from President Johnson asking for more time and putting the pressure on Israel not to invade. And at the last minute, they take a vote, and by the slimmest of margins, they agree to wait just a few more days. This is extremely significant from the vantage point of providence, because 2 days later, on May the 30th, King Hussein of Jordan gets in his private jet, flies himself to Cairo, has a meeting with Nasser, and signs on with Syria and Egypt for this war that's just going to take place any minute. And the key to understanding this key event is that had the war started on either the 27th or the 28th, or the 29th, or even the 30th, Israel would have prevailed, no doubt. God would not have allowed them to be defeated, but they would have not been able to recapture Jerusalem because Jordan had control over the West Bank and eastern Jerusalem at this time, and they were not involved in the war when those 2 invasions were stopped prematurely by the Lord, because that was buying enough time for Jordan to get involved, which took place on May the 30th. And then, even though they were involved politically or on paper, Moshe Dayan had told his officers not to attack any Jordanian territory once the war breaks out, unless Jordan also committed itself militarily. And this is exactly what happened. Over there in 1 Kings chapter 22, I believe it is, you have the story of God allowing these lying spirits to hook King Ahab into this battle by deceiving him. And this is exactly what God did in 1967. He used the defense minister of Egypt, a man named Amir, who committed suicide after the war, to lie to Jordan, King Hussein of Jordan, once the war got underway on June the 5th, when Israel had its preemptive strike, knocks out 75-80% of the Egyptian Air Force on the ground in less than an hour or so. And the defense minister of Egypt tells Jordan the exact opposite happened and totally lied to him. Said, hey, we've got the Israelis on the run. We've knocked out their Air Force. Come on board. And so the Jordanians commit themselves militarily. They do so at a place called the Government House. It's the United Nations headquarters right outside of Jerusalem, up on a big elevated area. It's a demilitarized zone. The Jordanians take that hill. I have a photograph of it in my book. You can't maybe see it real well, but here's a photograph of that hill. And the United Nations blue helmets are up on the top of that hill, and the Jordanian legionnaires throw them off easily, take the high ground, begin shelling Jewish Jerusalem. Well, now the IDF has the justification. They move on in, defeat the Jordanians, take that hill back, and by the end of Monday, they have southern Jerusalem surrounded. Tuesday, they have the very key battle for Jerusalem, Ammunition Hill. And Wednesday morning, they break through the Lion's Gate and capture the old city of Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, and all of the rest of that. And Now, the significant thing of the story is that this hill, since the time of the Crusades, has been known as the Hill of Evil Counsel, because that's where Caiaphas's palace was located, where you have the story in John 11 where the evil counsel was given to betray Jesus Christ, and the Sanhedrin following Caiaphas's suggestions. And so the Crusaders named it the Hill of Evil Counsel. So what do you see here for the reunification of ancient Jerusalem? Very simple. What did God do? Not once, but twice. He allowed invasions to be stopped at the 11th hour in order to allow enough time to take place for Jordan to get on board. And number two, he allowed these lying spirits, like he did over in 1 Kings, to draw King Hussein into the fighting. And he did so on the very spot where the Jews' ancestors betrayed their own Messiah 2,000 years earlier. Now, someone said a coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous, and that's how the Jews get their ancient capital back after 2,000 years ago, and that anniversary is coming up on June the 7th of this year. Lord bless you.